Now, to discuss that more, we are joined live from Ontario by Jason Unruhe, political commentator and analyst. Thank you very much, sir, once again for joining us on Press TV to give us your insight on this particular issue regarding the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Mr. Unruhe, why this backtrack from the U.S. president? Of course, we're not surprised. We see him say something and then say a completely different thing the next day. The same thing is happening with North Korea. Why do you think this is so?
I think that there may be more negotiations going on behind the scenes than we know. And I think that much of what Donald Trump says is spur of the moment, whatever he's thinking at that particular time, and is not particularly in line with any long-term strategy that he might have laid out over a course of some kind of period. It's interesting that he says the denuclearization is something that should happen without delay, yet it's something that he agreed to there being no actual time period for it to be carried out. I mean, these are two very contradictory statements, and I don't think that this really reflects so much on the DPRK, but on Trump for making certain demands, but then not doing anything or making any kind of plans that would facilitate that decision. I think it's a case of I believe that probably in the case of the summit, they probably came to a head. The DPRK said, we fear that you are going to invade us if we get rid of nuclear weapons. And the U.S. basically couldn't make them get rid of it. But perhaps this is a situation where Trump is trying to make it look like something is happening when it's not, or maybe there's more, or there's something going on behind the scenes that we're not seeing. It would seem more like that Trump is trying to save face in a situation like this. He said that he was going to make things happen, but he very clearly did not lay down anything that would actually, facilitate anything happening. So it seems like we are getting a very contradictory message coming out of Trump at this time, as we do get out of him on many issues concerning Americans and even international diplomacy. So I think that there is a real confusion here. I think Trump has made statements of what he's going to do, but he has no way of carrying it out. And this kind of flip-flopping is, on his opinion, is really just a more way of trying to deal with that weakness.
Mr. Unruhe, quickly, do you believe that this was also brought up in his meeting with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki?
Oh, I certainly think that they do. I mean, the Russian president certainly does want a stable and peaceful DPRK in order for them to carry out business. I'm sure that Russia would probably like many of the restrictions against the DPRK removed in order for them to conduct trade on a peaceful and mutually beneficial basis. And as long as the DPRK has remained stalwartly defended of its independence, this has always been very antagonistic to U.S. imperialism. And so long as the DPRK maintains that independence, there's always going to be these kind of hostilities between the two countries. So I'm sure Russia is probably trying to get in Donald Trump's ear to maybe relax some of the sanctions, to try to take a more diplomatic approach towards the DPRK, because nobody profits from a nuclear war. You can make the argument that war profiteers often do make a lot of money, but in a nuclear war, nobody wins and nobody makes any money off of that. Nobody wants it to happen. So I think that he was certainly discussed, and probably Putin was trying to bend Donald Trump's ear a little bit to try to take a softer, more diplomatic approach towards the DPRK.
Thank you very much, Jason Unruhe, political commentator and analyst, as always, joining us live from Ontario with his take on the recent comments made by the U.S. President Donald Trump regarding the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.